Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast Entrepreneur Odyssey. I'm delighted to have John Bunyan from ZenApps join us today. John's had such an interesting and varied career, so I'm sure you'll all find this conversation fascinating. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here.
We're delighted to have you here. John, I've got quite a few questions for you, so I'm going to jump right in it. So, John, you've spent 35 years as a senior marketing executive across some of the world's largest companies, including AT&T, Reuters, S&P, D&B. I mean, that's a really interesting resume right there. What's the common thread that's sort of driven you from corporate giant to cutting edge startup like ZenApps?
Hey, thank you. Well, first, I love big companies. At AT&T, I could think, well, let's throw 10 million at that problem and see what happens. And there's no such thing in a startup. And it was fun to do. The only negative for me really in the big company is that I react irrationally to HR problems and how the big companies try to get you to be a good manager and the way you praise and talk. Anyway, I won't say any more than that, but I love big companies because of the power you have. But in little companies, you are more directly challenged about what is the right thing to do. You have a greater sense of life or death. It's easy to imagine fail. The teams are more intense and you can move swiftly. Although I'll confess that more than a few times, I thought to myself when I'm in a small company, this is a problem that 10 million could solve in one quarter, but you don't have it in a startup. So you have to use your energy. I like startups. The only negative there, I guess, beyond that is that I don't like getting paid unreliably, which happens a lot in startups. And,
what do you mean by that?
I think that as a senior person, when startups don't have enough money to pay everyone, you pay everyone except the CEOs.
Right.
And, many times, so do we hire 2 more coders or pay ourselves? That's the kind of decision that you're making. I've made that decision. I've gone as much as 2 years without getting paid, but it's fun in a big company. That never happens. Anyway, I most like things that are super new. At AT&T, I got to create and lead a business group that was responsible for everything that wasn't a telephone call, everything with the internet, everything with messaging, everything with applications. It was amazing. And I had $200 million a year for external software development and $200 million a year for internal software development and $200 million a year for promotion. Just think about that for a second.
Yeah. I mean, we can only dream.
It was a lab, which is what would you do if you had all the money that you had? AT&T was pivoting from being voice only to trying to lead in data services. And so we had that money. It was incredibly exciting. I created the voting for American Idol to teach Americans about text messaging. Lots of applications, Tony Hawk, Kelly Slater, Grand Theft Auto, Find Friends, and all of which was underpinned by internet. So that was pretty darn exciting. ZenApps is similarly super new. It's literally at the forefront of go-to-market. The heart of it is emotional intelligence being applied to marketing. And I didn't know that much about it, but there's this professor, Zaltman at Harvard Business School. I'll give you the quote here. 95% of decisions are unconscious and emotionally driven. But digital advertising is driven by behavior and demographics, not emotions or beliefs until now. So that's the core of the idea. What can you do with that? And AI. And what I liked about the core ZenApps team, which I didn't join right at the beginning, but this is their 4th startup with 3 successful exits. One of the things you find in smaller companies that you may have less well-rounded experience than in bigger companies. And one of the things I like in little companies, you can find a team that knows how to do it. Then that's the only knowledge that they probably really need. So that meant way less risk for me. and a typical startup.
Right.
And everybody who I know who spends a significant amount of money on digital advertising wishes they could either spend less or get more. But these days, the performance gains, and we study them, we measure them all, but they're typically incremental. And for many marketers, the returns actually decay over time. And so ZenApps. ZenApps is for brand marketing and growth teams who've maxed out on what A/B testing and their behavioral data can do.
Right.
The idea, and I'm going to share some numbers, that means leaving significant conversion improvement unrealized. What it is, ZenApps, it's the only, to my knowledge, AI-powered emotional intelligence platform that optimizes the consumer who arrives at your website, that experience, and now make that experience the best that it can be by harnessing the human motions that are driving that person's decisions, not just historical, demographic, or behavioral signals. This is where the change is. And it's a proprietary large emotion model. It's built on top of Google Gemini, so that is underneath it, and Google Gemini is the delivery system.
Nice.
But we had 3 years of consumer data from one of the world's largest retailers, maybe even the world's largest retailer, in order to figure out how to work with emotional intelligence. So we have 300 million American consumers, haven't done international yet, over 6 billion data points, and it decodes the psychographic way to personalize.
Right.
It's, if you're a little more technical, I know some of your people are, we personalize based on a lot of data that comes in off of hashtag email identities. That's before they click on your cookies and you can engage your customer data platform. Even when they first hit your website, coming off an ad, coming off a social post, what do you show them? What message do you have? You have multiple segments. You have different types of people out there. Let's figure out who this person who's just shown up. Now, we don't necessarily know their first and last name or their address, but we actually know from a lot of things they've done on the web how to build an emotional intelligence profile for them, which will drive this whole process. It's super cool.
Very
and
cool.
So
very cool. Yeah.
It wasn't my idea, but being a practitioner, I got it right away. And I'll mention when we talk about AI more generally how dramatic the improvements are. So that's a long answer to your question.
Nice. No, very, very interesting. So you started your first business, I understand, from your living room. For those of us or those of my listeners that are in the same position, just starting from their quote unquote living room, what's the one insight that made the difference between surviving and scaling for you?
Cool. By the way, when I worked at bigger companies, I always wanted to be the entrepreneur. And when I actually started, it was way more frightening than I'd expected.
I'm glad you said that because it definitely is frightening.
I was in the living room and actually going through a divorce. So then I didn't even have easy access to the living room anymore.
No, that's just awkward.
I want to pick one thing. It was getting taken seriously by a couple of companies who were super respected in the vertical category. By the way, don't necessarily shoot mid or low. Go to the top. If you're in a vertical category and you get a name that they respect, you're done. Okay. This XYZ is using, okay, I want to see it. So in my case, it was wealth management. And yes, we had to build a product, which, boy, I wish I'd had AI then. I'd owned a lot more of the company. But we put everything into trying to land a couple of clients that we could leverage. And we got the product, and when we had 10 people in the company, once we had an installable product, within 6 months, we landed Charles Schwab in San Francisco, Fidelity Investments in Boston, and a firm many of you may not have heard of, but they're top firm in New York called Lazard. So we had those three. Then there was a big trade show. We went to the trade show and quietly said those names, and we were off and running. We had a pipeline and momentum that it wasn't really sustainable, but it was started. And so who are those clients? Who are those first three can be? One of the things that I did that I've seen other entrepreneurs not do is that when the prospect said, this is a really great product, but I wish you could do this too. And so much for saying, no, that's an add-on. If you want that, of course you can build it, but it's going to cost you $400,000. And sometimes they only say $50,000. Anyway, the right answer, if it's the right client, is to go build the software right now and show it to them this week. Okay. And you generate all this stuff like, I got to sell. No, you give them exactly what they want and you change it. The things that they're asking for are things that the market probably wants that you didn't anticipate. Yeah. So we only got those clients because I agreed to give all three of them customized enhancements that, frankly, it would have been a reasonable business decision not to, but I don't think we would have gotten any of them. And so we were unknown. And though it still took 2 years to get ourselves paid, this was the moment.
And I think that makes perfect sense. It's giving the customers what they need, right? In order to pivot. And sometimes that also costs a lot more money as well, right? So it's balancing for sure.
It does. One of the most disappointing things, I had this out with a client CEO, and we went to a trade show in Silicon Valley. We came back with 30 global leading companies who wanted to install. The first 5 we showed it to all asked for the same thing. And the entrepreneur said $1,000. And we took what was a great moment. Basically, this did data provenance, if you will, the history of data files over time in artificial intelligence. Anyway, just consider yourself, if they're asking you, consider paying for it.
Okay. Yeah. No, absolutely. No, that makes sense. You've got to spend money to make money.
Well, you've been desperate to get the product out the door. So when someone says it's not quite for me, you want to try to either talk them into it or go on to somebody else. And the reality is you might be right on the edge of success right there. Just say yes and write the software.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, let's pivot slightly onto industry trends. So ZenApps are your leading data products and services. The marketing world is drowning in data. There is so much data out there, right? But starving for insight, some might say. Where are most businesses, especially smaller ones, getting it wrong when it comes to using their data to drive outcomes?
That's good. And I knew you were going to ask that, so I have given it some thought here. Right? Yeah, this is the data rich, insight poor thing. The big question for me is, what is the data that will tell you if your vision is working as you hope? The template for what to do with your data is not someone else's list or template. This is your business, which is unique. And I don't think people spend enough time trying to figure out what the data that would really make a difference competitively is. Have you actually had whole meetings that are only about this, where people have assignments and you come back and reflect on it? What we're talking about is, if you want to build a data architecture, well, what's going to go into it? As I say, it's not someone else's list. It has to be yours. Interesting. I found an Amazon Web Services study of small and medium-sized businesses. 53% of SMBs don't know what insights their data could provide. 52% admit to not understanding the value of analytic tools. Well, that kind of makes sense because most of the people leading companies are not marketing people. And they have not been doing this. They have a marketing person, but you're in a small company. That may not be somebody who spent a lot of money before. So, you've got some challenges there. And if you don't believe that there is real but hidden ROI in analytics, you're probably going to wind up shortchanging spending and management time to get these insights. And believe me, they could easily improve the business. I'll say some more about it, but we tend to fall in love with the metrics that are going best.
Yeah.
Click-throughs. Okay. They're nice. And I do this. I'm so subject to this myself. I'm build my narrative out of all the good metrics. And the
Mm.
reality is the ones that are going to drive the success or failure are repeat purchase rates, customer acquisition cost payback, cohort retention, net promoter scores, and trends by not just segment, but sub-segment as well. Those are the things that we really need. And sounds simple, but it's the missing step for a lot of people. And I understand you can't afford everything, but if you don't know where you're going, so
Yeah.
that's number one. Two, this sounds so silly, but you have to clean up the data. This is like eating your vegetables. And I was in a bank recently, and one of the large platform providers with a very famous name said to the client, well, yeah, we've looked at it and this is great. And the price is going to be this $1 million. And when can we get it? And they say, well, by the time you clean your data up, it's going to be about 12 months. And mostly in smaller, you don't get told what really has to happen to clean up your data. And it's not very fun to spend money on. But once you start to leverage this data, particularly with AI, errors will cascade. But I'd be more worried about how you're missing opportunities. And specifically, I think segmentation is probably the most overlooked thing of all. Look, we all know how averages lie. One student has a 20, one student has 100. That does not mean that the average student is in the middle.
No.
And when you're trying to figure out who is this for, what do they care about? There are segmentation opportunities in your market that I'll bet $100 you're missing them. It's usually disruptive to some of your current processes. And it may not be something that anybody in your team has really been through. Strategically, the easiest way to grow a lot of these smaller businesses is to separate a couple segments and then figure out how to pitch them separately, even if it's the same product. How many segments are necessary? Not knowing anything about your business, probably more than 3. Are you doing that? Most of the ones I'm doing now have 6 segments, 6. And over time, they start to multiply because you say, oh, here, these people are doing that. What is that all about? Anyway, so clean up the data, segmentation, and here's an old familiar one, data silos versus single customer view. Everybody wants the single source of truth. But while we all have something nice from Oracle, whatever, most of us run a patchwork, point of sale, email marketing, accounting, support tickets. I had a funny experience last week with my favorite company in the world now, which is Whoop, the device that measures your body and information, can teach you a lot. It has a very deep AI model that tells you what's going on today, what happened last night, and so forth. Anyway, I had a hardware problem, and I went to go to an upgraded band, and they sent me the new thing. And when I slipped the sensor onto the band, it got stuck, and I couldn't get it off, and I couldn't use it. Oh my God, my best friend, Whoop, I can't see it. So I start talking to them in the chat, and they say, oh, we understand. This is a common problem. No. We'll get this resolved for you. Let me write an email to you that you can send to our support department. Here's the email I've drafted. And I said, wait a second. You're writing an email for me to send to you about a problem that you already know and acknowledge that I have. Why am I doing that? And they said, well, we just can't get from our system over to the support system. So we need you to contact support directly because we can't do it from here. Then I contacted support. They asked me to take pictures. They asked me to make a video. And the people in the chat were saying, gosh, we're really embarrassed. Anyway, the very sophisticated AI system was not working with the very simple support system. So I think this is one, there's always an opportunity to do better at it. And the customer experience bar is getting raised. You probably notice it all over. The customer experience you're getting is starting to be better. You can ask human questions, without a row and a column implied, and get a real answer back. So there's an opportunity here to do a good thing for your customers.
Nice. I like that. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions in one, and we're going to talk a little bit more about AI. We've touched on it previously, but we're going to talk about it more in depth. You in particular have seen a shift from print broadcasting media to digital and now AI driven personalization. And AI is really reshaping the market faster than most businesses can adapt. From your vantage point, from your vantage point and ZenApps, which AI-powered capabilities are delivering real measurable outcomes for marketing teams right now? And which tools are you benefiting from the most?
There's just no doubt that AI can boost the lift and conversions in the marketing process. How to do that? There's just no doubt that that works, and everybody's got to be doing it. So targeting and scoring gets way better. Creative and copy can be optimized at scale. Now, having said that, no one wants AI to generate creative on the fly on its own without a human review. It's funny in one of these meetings when somebody from compliance thinks that the AI is going to go off and start making statements for the bank on its own. They're absolutely terrified and want it shut down. But AI can automate lots of creative production. And as you expand the number of segments, which you should do, this is a lot of work. And it's not just the ad, it's also the next steps, all of the communications that you have along the way. And AI can pull that together so you can move quickly and support the 6 segments that I bet you need. Emotion and intent-based personalization. That's the ZenApps thing. You're going to read a lot about. It is transformative. I'll give you some of the numbers in a minute, but they're not incremental. And interestingly enough, as we've been out selling, Netflix is already doing this. They built it all themselves, and they're not talking about it. Watch this to become a must-have for kind of the rest of the world. Also, it's smart and easy to indicate the next best action and journey decision. All that's working pretty well. And then, as you'd expect, optimize your media spend and bidding and so forth. I mentioned kind of last on this list, operational automation. That's great. Everybody's trying it. And I think that's great. Strategic transformation is going to depend on doing something different rather than just doing what you're doing faster.
Okay. That's good advice.
But as far as what's working today, I'm going to brag a little bit that I'm going to give you these numbers because I think they're making the point that this emotional intelligence AI is, all right. I can't give you the names, but I can promise you that every one of them is a well-known US or global brand, a national retailer. This is actually somebody who has 6 brands and 20,000 products. And this is not, and we are not using it on all of them, but where we have, there's been a conversion rate improvement of 40 to 65%.
Wow, that's huge.
I mean, you buy an ad, they go over to your site, and you get, wow, we're helping build nursing education. And we've got an 18% visit to lead lift. Financial services, 29% improvement. National insurance carrier, 400% improvement. We're talking about somebody spending millions on a new type of insurance. And we got a 400% improvement on a campaign with millions of dollars in it. And anyway, they're very loyal. Can't tell you which one, but one of the top streaming services, 153% conversion rate improvement. They're going to shortly put out a public story talking about this. This is a very famous company. And all these companies now want to tell the investors, what are we doing with AI to prove to them? Okay. Well, what they're presenting, this very famous company, is what they're doing with AI is ZenApps, because they're locked in this. It's an amazing battle being spent by these streaming carriers in the US. The minimum budget to play in the digital marketing for a campaign is $5 million. And that's, a month.
A month.
153%. And then another, and got a lot of financial services, 71% reduction in cost of acquisition. Okay, so that is worth chasing. Those are not incremental gains. And we're just sort of learning how to do this now. I think that people are going to figure out huge ways to use this in their markets. So, and we're going to make it better by allowing the customer to very easy dial in whether they want to optimize conversions, revenue, net operating income, lifetime value, or net present value. And it's very exciting.
It is
What's more,
very exciting.
What's more hypey, there's no such thing as a one-click, fully autonomous campaign. That's BS.
No. Yeah, agreed.
I'll be dead before there is hyper personalized one-to-one creative for everyone, everywhere. No. Also, if you try to derive emotional intelligence, you need a lot of consumers and a lot of signals. So don't try to do it with limited data. And AI is also not magically solving all of the problems of attribution. It's a complicated field and it remains so. Finally, maybe you don't want to have a CMO, but you're not going to get one from from AI. AI is not a CMO. Well, some CEOs are thinking, well, I can do a lot of this myself. And then, with Perplex, anyway, you get,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, you can't, that's the thing. AI is amazing, but you do need humans to work with it for sure. So I'm going to move on to just really quickly, one last question about AI. At Dun & Bradstreet, you were praised for simplifying complex marketing messages and streamlining processes. How should businesses think about using AI not just as a productivity tool, but as a strategic differentiator in how they win customers?
Again, I knew you were going to ask me that, and it's really brought me up short trying to decide what I thought. But I'll put it into two things. I would take as a strategic goal to be the best in my category with data for both customers and prospects. Whatever else I'm doing, I want to be the best in my category. What does that take? Every aspect of the data landscape, the marketplace, the prospects, and the customers. That is, everybody does a pretty good job with customer data, but not with the segments. And then there's also this newer anonymous consumer data, often based on hashtag email identity. If you have this, you can drive your website first impressions and journey track. And before they even click on your cookies button. And again, when you want to think data superiority, think about Netflix. They have been a true marketing centric firm all along the way, ever since they were sending out CDs by mail. So one, be the category leader for data for customers and prospects. Rule two, success depends on AI plus your data. Your data is valuable. Collect more, figure out how to get more, figure out to get there. AI only really is valuable with a data set. And most people are putting 90% of the activity on just, let's get it running, feed some data. The other thing so success is, yes, you need whatever your version of AI is. Then how is that really optimized with your data? And then can you build into your business feedback loops, build in processes that get customers to keep telling you what to do? So those are my two rules: data superiority and AI plus data plus feedback. Those are what I think you have to do.
Yes. And clean data as well. I think I'd add to that.
It is no one ever, unless you've been a big data person or whatever prior to all this AI, you don't appreciate it fully. And nobody wants to go back to the boss and say, it's going to cost me X $100,000 to fix this in a year. The CEO is going to panic. Well, I can't, so it's a real challenge. Unfortunately, it's just kind of too easy to punt it.
Yeah. It is. Agreed. Okay, we're going to pivot again and we're going to talk about entrepreneurship and growth, right? So as that's a lot of our listeners today, right? So Better Outcomes Marketing works with founders and growing businesses to help them scale smarter, not just faster. Based on everything you've seen, what separates the entrepreneurs who successfully delegate and systemize their marketing from those who stay stuck doing it all themselves?
Very good question. So, it's possible that you have invented the new amazing product that doesn't need great marketing to succeed, but probably not. You probably need it more than one. And it's the cost of bringing aboard a customer. I think the guys and gals who succeed seem to have a good sense about what the real cost of acquiring a customer is. You have to achieve a reasonable, repeatable number here, or you don't have a business. And they actually budget some real money for something other than software development. This is the danger is the build it and they will come. As I say, you might have that type of product, but you probably don't. Mm-hmm. And the ones who succeed are the ones who are guided by a sense of how much they are spending to get a customer, how much they're spending on the customers that they tried to get and didn't get, and having a good sense of the dead reckoning. And frankly, if they've got a good product vision and all of that, they need this, and then they need to be able to plot their cash flow weekly. Those are, I'll say, relative to resources, as awful as it may be to confront the price of, cleaning up your data for them. If the sales go soft in a year's time, it will be much harder to get the marketing money you need to succeed. Get it now or figure some way to squeeze it from your budget.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. There you go. You heard it here first. You've got to budget for marketing. It's so very important.
Well, and by the way, the sales guys don't like to talk about it because they know they're in competition for their dollars. But they want to demand that there be a good marketing program. They don't want to pay for it either, though.
Nobody wants to pay for marketing, but it's so integral to a business. Right? I think we can all agree with that. Okay, so you've negotiated partnership at the highest levels. Reuters, S&P, Global Data Exchange. What's your advice to a founder approaching their first meaningful partnership or enterprise deal? What do the best business development professionals do that others don't?
Very interesting. So a couple of points, share some scar tissue here. When you're a smaller company, getting a deal with one of the big companies is incredibly exciting. And remember, it may be a big deal for you, but not so much for the partner. More than once, I put a big effort into developing a partner relationship and telling my investors, we're going to sign with IBM. It's possible to discover after you've done it that the other guys aren't really selling. Maybe they did the partnership just because one customer asked for it, but they have no real intention of selling it other than if it comes up again. So my suggestion is before you do the contract, why not try to close 3 good sales? If you do, both you and the partner will know that you can afford to put some sales resource against the opportunity and maybe even dedicate it. And also, when you're launching a new product or significant new capability, you want the name of a famous customer in paragraph 2, talking about how great it is, which means you've been working with them for months before you go out with a press release or Instagram, whatever. So my advice in partnering is force real selling soon and try not to get too excited because they won't say, no, we've decided it's not that important. What happens is that just too little happens and your investors say, I thought we had a deal with that. Yeah, what's going on? So do the selling up front.
Great advice. Great advice. All right. Let's pivot now to what the future of the business looks like and where you want to take the business in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. What's the one trend in data-driven marketing that business owners simply cannot afford to ignore?
There was an article in Business Week a few years ago, which it was a cover story, and the theme was, whatever your business is, Amazon may be coming for you. And then it was a series, look at what's already happened, and here's what they could do. So it was interesting. And they said that the smartest companies were actually trying to think that through as a thought problem. Today, it's for many businesses, maybe not yours, but for most of us, it's the age of agentic AI, which is these are new capabilities that can sit in front of the databases we're already using. And they completely change what's going on there. You see the market went down when people said, oh my God, there's going to be no need for Salesforce.com. And the whole category fell off the table there for a while.
Yeah.
But what I will tell you that it's possible to attack all kinds of existing businesses by starting with the agentic and then figuring out how to get to the data. And that's what I think people are going to use. And they're going to come into a product market with a really good product, and they can afford to have cost advantages, and people will try it. So, what could somebody do to you with agentic AI? And it can be a customer. It could be one of your vendors. It could be one of your ex-employees who now is working in a bigger company. It can come from anywhere, just like Amazon could. So can someone else use agentic to restructure your market to their advantage? And sometimes the tail can wag the dog. And it may make sense for you to buy the tail to differentiate yourself. But again, ask the question, do you have the data that you need, or is there a way to develop some sort of a moat? And no moat is permanent now, but some moat that you can operate in the market for a reasonable period of time and can use that data to improve the customer experience.
Okay. Makes sense. Brilliant. So I'm going to ask a final question here for you, John. For anyone listening who wants to understand more about what ZenApps does or connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
I want to thank you again for this opportunity. And it's fun beating it around with somebody who's from the business. So I'm J. Bunyan, Bunyan, at ZenApps. And ZenApps is my main focus, but I am helping some early stage firms. I'm working in the music AI field too. But I'd love to talk to you, and I'm very happy to help people without cost to talk and share experience. So the first one is certainly free, and maybe more than that. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to connect with your audience, and hope we'll get to talk again.
Well, thank you so much, John. It's been a really fascinating and insightful conversation, and I'm positive that our listeners have learned a lot from your time today. And thank you for also offering to be a sounding board or an initial mentor for some of our listeners, at least for one call. I'm excited to see the journey that ZenApps go on, and to hear some of those press releases that come out from the streamer that you mentioned earlier.
Yep. Yes. All right.
Excellent.
Well, thank you again, and good luck everybody on your 2026. Let's make it a great year.
Thank you. And same to you.